All right. Good evening. Nobody's in here just yet, but well, no, look at that. 3 people in here already. People joining pretty quick this evening. Let me get this started off the way I always do. Just kind of explain if this is your first time here on a live broadcast. This is pretty much just a Ask Me Anything kind of session. I don't have a specific topic planned out. I let the chat kind of dictate the way that the live broadcast is going to go. So I just do my best to answer all the chats that come in. If you leave a message and I don't get it answered, especially if there's a lot going on, ask it again after a few minutes. Realize there is a little bit of a delay from the time I speak to the time it actually shows on the screen. But ask it again. I'll do my best to get it answered. So we got some people coming in here. Christian Acevedo, hello. Hey, Walt, you're here today. Good to see you. Clueless Homesteaders, hello to you. Branscombe Farm, I have a hard time with that one for some reason. Hello to you. And Joanne Cordelos, hopefully everybody is having a good evening. I'm doing much better than I was last week. Hello, Penny. I had the tooth problem last week, went into the dentist, got it kind of, I had the tooth problem last week, went into the dentist, got it kind of fixed, ended up having a root canal done. No big deal. Got the temporary crown on right now, but antibiotics and things have taken down the infection, so the swelling's all down, feels so much better. Hopefully I'll be able to make it through the whole hour tonight. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't. So, all right, Denver is here. Piece of Peace Homestead, neat name. Greetings to you too. Philip Trooper, hello. First time here, but long time watcher of your vids. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate that. Rick Kennedy is here. Good evening to you. Cold, heavy rain here in Southern California, huh? Well, what's cold? What's cold to you in Southern California? I'm wondering. What is it, like 50 degrees maybe? It's I think it's 20. Well, no, it's not quite. It's not below freezing yet, but we got snow coming this weekend, so I can feel for you. Christian says, "Hey, I just hatched out some. Do you recommend moving from the incubator to the brooder box in the morning or afternoon?" You know, honestly, it doesn't really matter if you're doing morning or afternoon when you're talking about moving them from the incubator, the quail that hatch out. You know, make sure that they are dry and fluffy first, of course. You can leave them in there up to 48, 72 hours. I like to try to get them out after about 24 to 48 hours at the most. Also, try to peek through the windows if you can, and to make sure none of the other eggs have pipped but not hatched yet. So if you see holes poked in them, but the birds aren't hatched out of them yet, avoid opening the incubator until they actually hatch out. Opening the incubator at that time can cause it to kind of get shrink wrapped inside their egg. The membrane shrink down around them because of the rush of dry air that comes in. So that's probably your best bet. But as far as morning, afternoon, whatever's convenient for you, it doesn't really matter. Be quick. Move the ones out that need to be moved out, close it back up, and see what else hatches. Hopefully that answers that for you. All right. Bouvier Aaron, I think I got that right. Hey, the weather out our way. Well, it's not too bad right now. Let's see, it started off today, I think it was in the high 40s, 48, 47, but it just kind of got progressively a little bit colder and colder and colder as the day went on. I think it's in the mid 30s right now, high 30s. And again, we've got some snow coming this weekend, so that's not too bad though. Modern Hobbyist says, "Hey brother, hope your wife is doing better." Well, I don't know if she's doing better. She's not doing any worse. She feels fine. Those of you guys that don't know, my wife has been diagnosed with breast cancer. It is a very early prognosis. They said they caught it as early as they could have. She actually caught it herself. Her mammograms, good grief, like 3-4 months ago, came up clean. And then she found a lump that she went in. We had checked. The doctor at the time said, "I don't think it's anything to worry about," but it did come back as cancer. All the cancer is contained in that nodule, but precancerous cells moved into the surrounding tissue. So she's opted for a double mastectomy. That is next Friday is when we go in for surgery for that. So as far as if she's doing better, I mean, she's not doing any worse, but nothing's happened yet. Our hope is that that's all the treatment that's going to be required. When they do that, they will do they trace trace down the nearest lymph node where the breast tissue drains to, apparently, and then they'll do a biopsy of that, and as long as there's no cancer cells present in that lymph node, we know that there's none through the rest of her lymph nodes. She won't require any radiation or chemotherapy. It should be just that. That should be the only treatment that she needs. So that's our prayer. That's our hope. Appreciate all the prayers that you guys have offered up for me. Thank you very much. All right. So I'm the eternal optimist. I don't worry about things until it's time to worry about them. We serve a big God. He watches over us. He protects us and he guides us. And I'm not going to stress too much about it until it's time to stress about it, so to speak. So if you notice I'm kind of in a good mood, well, I'm always in a good mood. It doesn't really matter what's going on. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? We're going to die. I know where I'm going. So it could be a lot worse, I guess. All right. Walt says it is in the low 50s. Well, that's probably pretty cold for Southern California, buddy. Hang in there. It will get better. Eddie Chavez says, hey, Chris, what can you tell me about composting quail droppings? Okay, I can tell you a lot about composting quail droppings. It's not that hard to do, really. I did a whole video on composting a while back, but let's see if I can rack my brain here. Your ideal quail droppings are like incredibly high in nitrogen, real high in nitrogen. So you're going to need a lot of carbon material to put with them. And carbon material is going to be like dead brown grass, dead dry leaves. This is a great time of year to do that. What else? Anything you would think of brown. Cardboard would work for carbon. Shred it up. Don't leave it like big whole sheets of cardboard. Paper would work. Newspaper's fine to use for that. Shred it up. Don't use the glossy stuff. Use the regular newspaper. All that stuff is going to be considered carbon, the brown stuff, so to speak. Although quail manure, I guess, is brown. It's still considered a green, a nitrogen. It's very high in nitrogen. So you need to mix probably, by volume, not by weight. Probably about twice as much carbon as you do manure. And it's best if you can kind of layer it in a little bit, like put down just a layer of manure, a layer of carbon, layer of quail manure, a layer of carbon, just kind of pack it on top of each other. And then you can do it a number of different ways. You can let it set and just compost. All right, are we back on? All right, it says I'm back on. Everybody can see me? Good. Well, somebody says yes, so I guess that means we are. I'm not seeing it in my screen, but hey, if you guys are seeing me, then we're good to go. Okay, so back to finishing up with composting. So you can let it set and just leave it there for 6 months or a year or whatever, or you can turn it and get it going a lot faster. So about every 14 days, go out and just shovel it out of one bin into another bin. Make sure it stays kind of damp, not like soaking wet, but damp. If it starts to smell bad, like a sewer or something like that, add more carbon to it and turn it. Aerate it and get your carbon in there, and it'll compost down pretty quick. All right, hopefully that answers that question for you. All right, where are we at here? I'm losing some track of where I'm at here. Where are we at? All right, well, hey, if I missed your comment, then forgive me, but let's see, we got Penny Badinsky. There we go. My quail are 7.5 weeks old. Thought I might see an egg by now. I have 25 in the pen. You showed us how to build. Do you think that is big enough for them? 25 in the pen. I'm not sure which pen you're talking about, but yeah, it's probably plenty big enough. Most of my pens are pretty good size. It should be fine. You may not be seeing eggs if you don't have any external light on them because the days are so short right now. They need about 14 hours a day of light in order to lay on a consistent basis. And 7.5 weeks, that's right on the verge of when they're going to start laying. So chances are they were just waiting for you to ask, and then you're going to go out and you're going to see eggs. And don't be surprised if it comes on like, you get a bunch of eggs one day and then no eggs the next day. It's when they first start laying, especially, they're going to be a little bit sporadic with it. So don't stress about that. As long as you've got 14 hours a day of light on them, they should start laying anytime, and you should be getting pretty good egg production out of them in no time. All right, Denver says, I bought quail from 2 different people. Should I breed them together or keep them separated? That's really up to you, Denver. If it was me, I'd just put them all together because keeping them separate is kind of a pain in the butt. But it's up to you. It depends on what your end goal is. If they're different breeds of quail and you want to keep the breed lines pure, then you're going to have to keep them separate, of course. But I don't know if it's worth it, honestly. All right, Walt says inbreeding occurs only really, inbreeding occurs only really shows up after 3 generations. Change out the roosters every 18 months, 2 years. There we go. Yeah, good grief, I had a hard time getting that out. But yeah, he's right. That's a good point. If you are putting them all together and you're worried about inbreeding, every 18 months, every 2 years, something like that, get some new roosters and throw them in there, and you're not going to have any problems with inbreeding. It's going to be fine. So Piece of Peace Homestead says, Kevin of Living Traditions had a good surgery yesterday, even with a few complications. Prayers do work, and continue prayers for your wife. You're absolutely right on that piece. I've been following their channel as well, and had some interaction with them a little bit. And yeah, he just got out of surgery yesterday. Hernia surgery ended up being more complicated than what they thought it was going to be originally. But he's going to be just fine. He's already up moving around and things like that. So you're absolutely right. Prayer works. Like I said, we have a big God that he is the greatest healer of them all. So that's where I put my faith. All right. Mark says, hallelujah, let tomorrow worry about itself. Yep, absolutely. That's one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It is in, I get it mixed up. Is it Matthew 14, Mark 14? It's somewhere right around in there where Jesus is talking, and he says, who could add a day to his life by worrying? I can't remember it word for word, but look at the birds. Look how your Father clothes them. Look at the flowers, how they're adorned. Are you not much more valuable than they are? Who can add a single day to his life by worrying about it? Let tomorrow worry about itself. There's enough to worry about there. I can't remember it word for word, but that's basically what it says. So that's what I hold on to. All right. Penny says, oh my, so sorry about your wife. God will take care of you both. Yes, she will. Yes, he will. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And Christopher West is here. Hello to you. I'm going a little fast tonight, trying to catch up. When I lost connection, the chats didn't stop. So forgive me if I seem like I'm rushing a little bit. And still getting over a little bit of congestion from a cold I had a couple of weeks ago. All right. Walt says, 8 weeks is minimum for Coternics if they have 14 hours of light of day. You know, Walt, I've actually had some start laying as soon as 6 weeks, but it's rare. You're right, 8 weeks is much, much more common. Isaiah says, I have a choice to house my quail inside or outside. I am in winter, just don't have a windbreak for them. So should I house them inside for this year? If you don't have a way to break the wind, then yeah, you need to give them probably inside in your garage, something like that. Give them somewhere to get out of the wind. Now, you could just put a great big cardboard box in there with a hole cut in it, you know, put a piece of cardboard underneath it or whatever. They can get in there and get out of the wind. That would be just fine. So you could do it either way. All right. Sean Monahan says, my rabbits had babies a week ago. Congratulations. I've got some, what are these guys going on? 2 weeks old now, I think. 3 weeks maybe. No. I think they're 2 weeks old now. I've got some that are 2 weeks old now, so congratulations on yours. Hope they're doing well. Walt says, run leaves through a brush chipper to break down the leaves for faster compost. That's absolutely right, Walt. That's a great idea because, you know, if you just pile up leaves, dead leaves, and you don't break them down or shred them up or anything like that first, then they can kind of create like a tarp effect where they'll just protect everything underneath it instead of letting water drain through and let everything kind of compost through. If you have a leaf blower, you can usually use that like a vacuum and vacuum them up, and it'll shred them up itself. Run over them with a lawnmower, whatever. It's nothing really big to stress about, especially if you're going to be turning it fairly regularly, but that is a good suggestion. In the Woods said, how's the tooth? Much, much better. Got a root canal done. The antibiotics took effect. Got this, and I'm doing pretty good with it now. Still got to go in and get the permanent cap put on, but you know, crossing my fingers, that's the end of that problem. Let's see. Sean says, I was wondering if it's normal for a Flemish rabbit to have 15 babies. They are all healthy. Well, I'm not incredibly familiar with Flemish. 15 is a big litter for any rabbit. And the fact that they're all healthy and you didn't lose any, that's a really good sign. I wouldn't say that that's a normal. I mean, bigger rabbits do tend to have big litters, but I think 15's pushing it on the high end of that. So congratulations on a big litter there. Hopefully they all do well. Hey, there's a good idea, too, Walt has for breaking up your leaves. He says, rake up your leaves, put them in a clean trash can, and stick a string trimmer, or what we call a weed eater in southwest Missouri. Stick it in there, shred the leaves up, and break them down for faster composting. That's a great idea. You wouldn't have to worry about, like if you run them over with a lawnmower, you got to collect them all up. If you got them in a trash can, they're going to stay in there. So that's a great idea, Walt. Charles Langston says, concerned about high chlorine in our water. Will this cause problems with quail? Prayers for your family. Well, thank you for the prayers. I don't know how high the chlorine is there, but the chlorine's pretty high here too, I think. I mean, it's higher than like what you swim in the swimming pools. I've never had a problem that I've noticed with any of my animals, dogs. I mean, this is the water I grew up on, so and maybe why my teeth are bad, and I'm having problems. But it's never been a problem. I've never had any problems with any of my animals with it. I wouldn't be terribly concerned about it. In the Woods kind of makes a comment here too. Chlorine will dissipate if water is sat out overnight, so that's a good point there too. Hey Boris, glad to see you here. Yeah, if it's city tap water, don't worry about it. That's kind of my thought. All right, the Nash Burger says, hey, do you worry about the birds in the heat getting up to 100 to 106 plus daily now? Oh, man, that's, yeah, they do struggle in the heat more so than they do in the wintertime. So do the rabbits, and so do most animals, honestly. As long as you keep them in the shade, give them plenty of ventilation, they seem to do just fine with it. Make sure they always have fresh water. Do not let them run out of water. That's probably the key. But they seem to do just fine with it. We get temperatures in the hundreds in the summertime, sometimes for a week or two on end, but it doesn't last for extended periods. But I don't have any problems with my birds in the heat. They're pretty resilient to it. But you can tell there's times where they're definitely not comfortable. But again, keep them in the shade, and not just the shade of like the hutch. You want to keep them under like tree cover or something like that that shades the entire hutch. That does make a big difference. So hopefully that answers that. Pixel, I think that's Pixel YT. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. There's not enough vowels there for me. But hello to you. I'm glad you made it. Eddie Chavez says, I hatched out 7 last week out of 63. Oh, no. But I'm not discouraged. It was my first time, so it was a success to me. There you go. I got 25 in the incubator. I know I will have better luck this time. I know you will, so good luck on your next hatch. What is the saying? There is no such thing as failure. It's just lessons learned. And I'm sure you figured out a few things. Like you said, don't be discouraged about it. Keep trying. Do it again. You're going to have much better luck the next time. Walt says, cheap tarp will make a good windbreak. There you go, Walt. That's a great idea. If you've got a Harbor Freight in your area, you can usually pick them up for $5. Sometimes they have a free tarp when you buy anything. You might get 2 of them for $5. So that's a good suggestion. Joe73 says, hi all, I'm late, but I made it. Hey, nobody's keeping track, so we're glad you're here. Eugene says, oh, hello, first time that I can look at your stream in my time zone. Amazing. Well, hey, I'm glad that it worked out. I know this is difficult sometimes. I can't get, we've got people that come and watch this channel and join in the comments and things from all over the world. And I work an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday job, so I can't be on live temperature. I just read somebody's comment on there and got me sidetracked. I can't be on live in everybody's time zone whenever it's the most convenient for them, unfortunately. I just do the best I can to be on here when I think the most people would be available. All right. Pixel says, how can I tell if my hen is going to lay an egg? I don't know that there's any way to tell if your hen's going to lay an egg for sure. You just come out and you find an egg. If they're about 8 weeks old, they got plenty of light, then they're probably going to lay an egg pretty quick. That would be my guess. But there's not really any sign that you can see. Craternix quail lay an egg a day in the season. When they're in season with enough light and all that kind of stuff, they lay an egg a day. So they're always going to lay an egg. I mean, that's just the way it is. There's not anything to look for, any way to know for sure when it's going to happen. Denver says, I get 24% protein game bird starter in bulk for $13 for 50 pounds, 28% for $18. Do you feel that the 24% is okay for the older breeder quail? Yeah, it's okay for the older breeder quail. I personally like a little bit higher protein, but that is a pretty big price difference on it, depending on how many birds you have. But 24% will be fine. Look at the calcium. Make sure it's at least 1.5 to 2, 2.5, somewhere around in that range. And it should be fine. It'll work. Yep, well, if you're using cardboard in your compost, you definitely do need to shred that up. I agree. Penny Budinsky says, I think it's interesting that my quail sleep on the open side of the pen, and then during the day they are mostly in the sandy area. I thought it would be the opposite. I find the same thing, Penny, that my quail do the same things. In fact, if it's really, really windy out, a lot of times they'll be in the sandbox area because it's blocked from the wind. But other than that, they're almost always out in the open, in the middle of the night, and during the day. It doesn't matter how cold it is. They like to be out in the open most of the time. But they do enjoy that sandbox when it's windy. All right. Backyard Survivalist says, hello. Swellings down, I see. Yep. Glad to see you're doing better. Yep, the tooth is all better. Infection's gone, I believe, anyway. Took the last of the antibiotics today, and everything feels pretty good. Isaiah Chapman says, when can I move my quail to the red cup waters? They are 2 weeks old. You might give them until they're about 3-4 weeks old, so they're tall enough to reach down in there pretty comfortably. But that's really the only thing. I mean, you could try them out now and see if they'll actually get to them. Just fill the cups up with water, and if they're drinking them, you'll know, because if you take all their other water away, let them clean, push the little plunger, fill the cup up with water, take every other access to water they have away, leave them for a day, they'll drink all that water out of the cups. And if you put water in there, like in a dish or something like that in the container, and they all just flock to it and start drinking like crazy, that means they're not getting enough water out of the water cups. If they just kind of casually, like, maybe they'll go get a drink every once in a while out of that, then they're using the water cups and you're good to go at that point. So that's a couple of tests you can do on it. I usually expect about 3 to 4 weeks before they're ready to drink out of the cups. All right, Jessica says, I need to put a group of quail I hatched outside at 6 weeks, but I've been told if I move them from inside about 68 to 70 degrees to outside range from 50 down to 30, I'll kill them. Any advice? Yeah, I mean, that could happen for sure. That's a pretty drastic temperature drop all at once. If you have a garage or something like that that maybe is a step down, but not quite that harsh, you might be able to move them out there for a couple of days, get them acclimated to that for 3 or 4 days, and then go ahead and move them outside. At 6 weeks old, they can probably handle it, but it's not a guarantee, and I don't want to tell you, do it. I mean, I've had pretty good luck with it and haven't had too many problems. But I did lose a whole bunch of 4-week-old babies I moved outside when a sudden cold front came through one time. So it is something to kind of be concerned with. The other thing you can do is, move them outside during the day when it's 50 degrees, bring them back inside at night, and do that for a week to get them kind of a little bit more used to that. And then maybe give them a night outside and see how they do. So there's a couple of things you can do with that. All right, Heaven Bound Homestead says, Dollar Tree has tarps for $1. Hey, I'm going to have to check that out. I didn't even know they carried tarps. Jaw Blue says, my doe has 7 babies 3 days ago. Few look thin. Should I worry? Probably not. I mean, if they're 3 days old at this point, they're probably getting fed. They're probably doing okay. If you were going to worry, there's probably not a lot you can do about it anyway, honestly, unless you want to go into force feeding them, and not force feeding them, but making the mother hold still while you let the babies nurse. I'm not sure what you mean by a little thin. I mean, if they're not active, if they're skin and bones and lethargic, then yeah, that's something to worry about a little bit. But again, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So 3 days old, they're probably going to be okay at this point. That would be my guess. Good luck with it. I hope it works. Walt says, I have seen a cardboard shredder made from circular saw blades, uses 5/8 arbor hole on a 1/2 metal shaft, so the blades are tilted on the shaft mount. It's inside a feed chute. Interesting concept. Sounds a little dangerous, but it's an interesting concept. All right, Sean Monahan says, I have a pair of California rabbits that have a max of 6 babies, and I never get anything more than that. Sometimes it's a bad birth, and one will die out of the 6. Yeah, that happens from time to time. A lot of that, I mean, that's just genetics of the rabbit. Me personally, if that was my rabbit, I would look to see if I could find a better breeding doe that's going to throw a little bit bigger litters. I like to get at least 8 to 9 out of a litter, but that's sometimes hard to find, and it can take a little while. If there's nothing wrong with only having 6, that's not a bad deal at all. All right, Chance says, what do you think about putting different breeds together? Different breeds of what? Are you talking about different breeds of quail, I'm assuming, together? It's fine if that's what you want. I like to keep my jumbos separate, and I've raised some other breeds, but I like to keep my jumbos separate because I want them to stay jumbos. I don't want them to get diluted down to standard quail over generations or any of that kind of stuff. I want them to stay jumbos. So that's why I keep them separate. But all my others that are mixed, they're all mixed breeds, like my silvers and, let's see, I had some tuxedos and some of those other kinds of things. I just threw them all together because I don't really care on those. Walt says, feed chute needs a guard to prevent from getting fingers near the blades. Yep, that was what I was meaning by a little dangerous there. All right, Pixel says, thanks for the tip. I'm a bit worried, though. This is my first year hatching quails. Mine are 2 to 3 months old. Somehow I managed to hatch a female and a male. They were they were meant to be. I guess so. Yeah. Hey, don't stress about it. Like I said, you're going to learn, from mistakes. Don't worry about it. You're going to make some mistakes. Some things are going to happen, but you're going to learn from that. You're going to be better off in the end for it, and I'm sure you're going to do just fine. So don't stress about it too much. All right, Walt says, let's see, the model I saw had a shop back on the far end and a collector box to pull shredded cardboard away from the chopper blades. Yeah, that's an interesting concept. Huh. Eugene says, I have a question about feeding quail on tight budget. Have seen a few videos on this. Most suggest was to try to contact food store for scrap, get coffee ground and mix on shredded leaves. Also, one great suggestion was going to your local seed dealer and getting the defect seed that are removed during the triage and feed them to your bird. That's a good idea. Anything else come to your mind? Walt says, Eugene, I don't drink coffee. I don't think coffee grounds would work. There we go. Yeah, I don't know that coffee grounds are a good option for them either. Other than maybe it would draw in, I don't even know that it would draw in some bugs, but I really don't know that, I mean, quail are omnivores. They eat insects and they eat vegetables. So you really need to do more than just seeds and vegetables and things like that to feed them. That's not my area of expertise. I can't tell you exactly the mix that it needs to be, but you can't feed them on just bugs and you can't feed them on just seeds. There needs to be a good mix there. And I'm sorry, I don't know like I said, it's not my area of expertise. I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionalist, I guess you would say, for birds. I do, I know quite a bit about commercial game bird starter. That is a nutritionally sound, good feed for the quail. But as far as feeding them like completely natural things, that's a lot of work. I can't give you the exact mix of what you need with that. I'm sorry. Wish I could help out more. Onyx is here. Good evening to you. Joe Shelburne says, buck rabbits aren't sterile from the heat any longer. Got a new litter of Holland Lops, Mini Rex, and Dutch bunnies. Hey, glad to hear that, Joe. Congratulations. Eugene says, by the way, love the weekly live stream. I'm located in France, so usually look at the day after. Hope everyone gets better for the family. Well, thank you so much. Everybody is doing pretty well right now, and I'm confident that this will be a story that we'll just get to tell people later on. Remember that time when, so not too worried about it right now. All right, Phil Trooper says, does quail meat get tough if the birds are on the older side when butchered, as chickens sometimes can? Well, not really. I mean, quail meat's always a little bit on the tough side, just because it's so lean and it's so hard to cook without, overcooking it just a little bit to make it a little tough. But I don't notice a big difference with older birds. In fact, I think older birds have a little bit more fat on them. So if anything, they may tend to be just a little bit more flavorful, so to speak. But not a big difference in the toughness of the meat. I don't notice that at all. All right. Eugene says, Walt Lars, coffee ground is mixed with the shredded leaves, some scrap to get some active compost that the quail can feed on. I'm still not sure if I'm following that concept about feeding active compost to your birds, but hey, who knows? Like I said, I'm not a nutritionist, so. All right, Onyx says, I had 11 of 14 quail hatch healthy this week. One hatched and couldn't stand or even try to walk. He kept his legs backwards and will only lay on his side. 2 didn't fully develop. It sounds like, let's see, I had 11 of 14 quail hatch healthy this week. Okay. You might, who knows? That could be a number of things causing that. It sounds kind of like splayed leg. But although you're saying he's laying on his side, that's probably more like a neurological issue or he was just too weak when he got out of the egg and just never regained his strength or any of those kinds of things. There could be a number of different things that cause that. Your temperature, your incubation temperature being a little bit on the low side. If they're hatching out a little bit late, that could be part of that. Just didn't developing fully. That could be because of the temperature in the incubator. That's probably the most likely thing. There may be hot and cold spots in your incubator, and where they were at was a little bit colder. It doesn't take a lot, just a couple of degrees, and it can make a big difference in that. It could be genetics. For some reason, those birds just had poor genetics for whatever reason. You don't know. It could be any number of things like that. Those are probably the 2 most common ones, though. But still, 11 out of 14, that's pretty good hatch rate. So if you had 13 hatch, 1 didn't hatch, I'm guessing. And Well, I'm having a hard time following that, but still, that's a pretty good hatch rate. 11 out of 14 that hatched healthy. That's pretty good. I'd be pretty happy with that. All right, Noah, hello. Glad you made it. All right, Mark says, Mark, is it Khalil? Khalil? I'm not sure if I got it right. Hopefully I did. All right, my rabbit have this gunk in their eyes, mostly like ear mites. I've only been treating his ears for 4 or 5 days with mineral oil, and it's already clearing up fast. Should I continue the 3-week treatments? You know, usually, yeah, I treat until the scabs are all gone, and then I just kind of skip every couple of days and treat them for another week or two. That's usually all I do. You may, if they come back again pretty quick, then go ahead and treat again, and then go for the full 3 weeks to make sure that you really get rid of them. But usually I don't find it's necessary to go quite that long. As far as gunk in their eyes, though, that's a little bit different. I'm not sure. Most likely ear mites. Ear mites shouldn't be getting in their eyes. That's probably something else entirely. If they're very young rabbits, it could be nest box eye. You probably want to clean that out. You know, just like some chamomile tea is a good option for that. You know, brew it like you would brew for tea, like a cup of tea, and then use the tea bag. Maybe put some honey in there. And yeah, a little bit of honey is good. It's an antiseptic on its own. Stir that honey around in there, dip the tea bag in there, squeeze out the extra, and use that to kind of wipe their eyes off and clean their eyes out. And that'll help kind of clear that up. It's probably some kind of infection. It needs to be taken care of. If that doesn't help, you may need to actually have to go to some kind of antibiotic eye ointment or something like that to take care of it. We'll probably take care of it pretty quick. All right. Where are we at here? Brad says, do you get many diseases that kill rabbits in America? I live in Australia and we have some nasty diseases that kill them. Not a big problem in America. We did have our first case of, what's the common one that's there in Australia? The one that the government released to keep the rabbit population in control. I can't remember what it's called. But there was a case that was discovered somewhere. I posted it in the Facebook group. We had some discussions about it, but I can't remember where that was. And I was in Tennessee or something. And it was only on one farm. It was only one place that it was discovered. Is it RHD? Am I getting there? I can't remember. Either way. But there's not too many diseases around here. It's not a huge issue. Parasites are probably a little bit bigger concern than most diseases are. But again, that depends really a lot on where you live as well. I don't have problems with parasites too much here. All right, Sean says, I'm supposed to be getting 8 rabbits tomorrow. What do you think about breeding dwarf rabbits? Well, if you're going to breed them for meat, I don't know that that's the best option. But if you're going to be breeding them for, like, to sell as pets or any of those kinds of things, it's probably a great option. Pet people tend to like the dwarf rabbits a lot better, and you could probably sell them for a little bit more than you could meat rabbits anyway. But they're probably not going to be good meat rabbits. It's going to take them a long time to grow out. They're not going to get very big. It's just not going to be worth the effort in the end. That's just my thoughts on it. Yeah, coffee grounds are a great idea for compost, but yeah, I'm kind of with Walt. I'm not real sure. Let's see what we got here. Eugene says, mix it with the shredded leaf or the compost, whatever you call it. Yeah, you mix coffee grounds with shredded leaves, you'll make compost, but I'm not sure about feeding active compost to your quail. The only thing I could think is if it wasn't real hot compost, it might draw bugs in, and then the quail would eat the bugs out of the compost. That might work pretty well. But I think that would take a long time, and that's not going to happen in the wintertime. But who knows? David Butler says, do you know when your quail light will be ready to sell? Oh, man, I wish I did. I've got another sample coming. Had a little bit of a battery problem. The battery just didn't last long enough. Not like during the day. I mean, it went out. It failed. So I had them they're sending me 2 more samples I'm supposed to get tomorrow. I'm going to be testing them out. It's an improved battery. There is going to be a 1-year warranty on the product, so I'm not terribly worried about it from that standpoint, but I don't want to have a lot of people having to exercise the 1-year warranty if the battery goes out, so I want to make sure it's a good battery. I'm hoping in the next 30 days or so, I'll be able to go to Kickstarter with it. If it sells, then it'll probably be 45 days. I mean, it's probably not going to be out in time for spring, unfortunately, but it'll probably be 45 days or so for the manufacturing and all that to take place and to get the products actually shipped out. Don't know yet. I'm working on that, but I want to make sure that the product's ready to go before I bring it to market. All right. Noah says, hi, Chris. Me and my dad have quail and ducks. And it's super weird hearing quail and ducks because we raise them in our garage. Oh boy, you've got quail and ducks in your garage. I can imagine you have got a very noisy garage. Glenn Compton says, Chris, good to see you. Question, I have an 11-week-old quail hen that keeps her on the floor. As in she doesn't pick it up, but to eat or drink. Any ideas? I've got an 11-week quail that keeps her on the floor. Keeps her head on the floor? She doesn't, I guess that's what you're saying? Yeah, keeps her head on the floor. She doesn't pick it up to eat or drink. That sounds like it could be a form of what's it called? Spry neck. Rye, there we go. Rye neck. Sometimes I get a loss for words. It sounds like it could be a form of rye neck, especially if she's like got her head tilted, holding it down, looking kind of up towards the sky. That's a pretty common thing that you get in, how old did you say this bird was? 11 weeks old. That's pretty old. That sounds, if that's the case, and it wasn't like that as a chick, and that's what it is, well, it could be, you know, if she had some kind of injury or something like that that caused it, which is probably the most likely at that age. Other than that, it's probably a vitamin deficiency of some kind. And I can't remember what vitamin it is. Is it vitamin E that would be helped? I can't remember. There's maybe it's a thiamine deficiency that causes that. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. I did a video on it a while back. If you go back through my channel, look for the video on rye neck. You can probably find it, and I talk in some more detail about that. I just go back and look at the notes on that again because I can't remember the specifics of it. But yeah, you can get, if it is rye neck, you can get a supplement, Farm Tractor Supplies. Look for it. It'll be a chicken supplement is what you get, and you put it in the water. And it can help. It's not a guarantee. It can help if it's a neurological thing, like she banged her head real hard on something or whatever. There may not be much you can do about it, unfortunately. All right, Noah says, I always see this a day before. I live in Green Bay. You always see this a day before. I'm not sure what we're talking about there. Noah, I'm lost. I'm sorry. You always see the live stream a day before, or... I don't know, but, oh well. Alana says, hi, Chris. My last batch of 56 eggs, I got 25. It's not bad. I have 4 colors and only hatched 3 colors. Could my rooster of the 4th color be sterile? It's possible that it could be. Or, I mean, for whatever reason, it's not breeding. Or chances are it's probably breeding, but it's breeding some of the other birds in there that are different colors. So, you know, maybe they've got recessive traits for that one bird. I mean, there's a lot of different things going on there. It's hard to say for sure. I wouldn't worry about it being sterile, really. I think that's probably not the case. If anything, there's probably maybe some temperature issues with your incubator. It needs to be adjusted up or down a degree or two. That's probably why of the, you know, like I said, you're 56 eggs, you got 25 birds hatching. That's not an absolutely terrible hatch rate, but you can boost it up a little bit, and that's probably due to your temperature settings. You just need to, you know, do some, get a really accurate external thermometer, verify the temperature. All right. Noah says, today is Thursday night for me. It's weird seeing Friday live stream. Well, it's Thursday night for me as well. Make sure I put the right date on there. Today is the 6th of December, so I'm not sure. I don't know why you would think it would be Fridays, but I always do them 7 o'clock Central Time on Thursdays. Malt's got a good comment there too. He says it could be Alana. Back to Alana. It could be that your 4th rooster could be a half-breed mixed with some of the other colors, so his color genes might not have been pure. That's a good point there too. Oh, Mark. Okay, you're clarifying. You meant gunk in their ears, not their eyes. And don't worry about the last name. Good, I'm terrible with names. Okay, yeah, as far as gunk in their ears, yeah, that's probably related to the ear mites. Thank goodness. I was a little bit worried about that there for a while. So yeah, just keep treating until all that's gone. It'll be gone pretty quick. You know, they'll shake their heads, they'll scratch it out themselves. You don't have to pull it out. Just treat until it's all gone. Antonio says, my rabbit had 7 babies, but 1 died. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. The rabbits are in a colony. Should I take the babies out with the mom or no? I'm not sure that, I mean, I would move them at this point. It depends on how old they are. If they were just born like the last day or two, it might be a good idea to move them into a cage at that point if you're worried about them. if you have a good nest box. But other than that, I don't know that it's a big concern. I'm not a colony raising expert myself, so I'm not sure the absolute best advice to give you on that. If she built a good nest for them, though, they're probably just fine wherever they're at. All right, where are we at here? Denver says protein source for birds are night crawlers. Good point. In my yard at night, I can catch a soup can full in about 10 minutes. I also have dubia roaches that I raise for lizard food. Have you ever fed insects? Yeah, I feed some insects to my birds occasionally, mostly like black soldier fly larvae or some of those kinds of things that I find. It's not like a common part of their diet, but it is treats that I give them from time to time. Walt says, for info about quail nutrition research, Dr. Ernest Ross from University of Hawaii, from back in the 60s, the U.S. State Department. The U.S. State Department sent to several Pacific Island countries to develop poultry feed using local native feed sources. Interesting. Dr. Ernest Ross was my uncle. Interesting, Walt. I didn't know that. I think I've heard the name before, but that's not something I've dove into heavily to know. As far as feeding, like I said, feeding on natural foods without buying commercial foods. So I don't know. I'm not the best source for that. So good. Thank you for that advice on that, Walt. Thanks for that information. We'll have to check it out. David says, thanks. As soon as the light is ready, I'm going to get one. Well, hey, I appreciate that, David. Keep an eye out, and I will let you guys know before we go to Kickstarter. Got to get that kicked off really good. So. All right, Sean Monahan says, gotta go. Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Well, thanks for stopping in, Sean. You have a good evening. Yeah, mealworms. Walt's got another suggestion. Mealworms is a food source for quail. That's a good one. Oh, and Chief, I don't know if that's Chief Og or Chief OG Garage, but is coming in and speaking a little bit of Spanish. Saludos. Says, finally made it to a live. Cheers, everyone. Hey, I'm glad you made it, Chief. I appreciate that. I always get to practice my Spanish in the comments sections whenever I see you comment on a video. Alana says, my colors are separate. Okay, interesting. Well, you may go back to, we're talking about the birds that you didn't hatch out all your colors, right? Let's see. I think Walt may be onto something too. It could be that rooster is a mixed breed, so you didn't have the pure genes. That's why you didn't get any of that color. It could be a number of different things. I don't think I'd worry too much about him being sterile, but if the colors are all separate, then you can check the eggs for fertility before you, like right now. You know how to do that. Hopefully you just, cut the egg open, dump it out in a bowl. There'll be a little white spot on the egg that shows it's a mature egg, I should say, not a fertile egg necessarily. What you're looking for is kind of a bullseye ring around the white spot. It's a real faint bullseye, but it is a bullseye looking ring. You should be able to see it. You may have to get it in just the right light. Check those eggs, and as long as they're fertile, you know your rooster's not sterile. So that's where I would go with that. Yep, Walt's got another suggestion there too that's pretty good. Fourth color rooster might be a low on the pecking order, and the other three run him off before the breeding the girls. So, and Alana says, thank you so much, and God bless you and your family. Well, thank you. God bless you as well. Brad says, it's the 7th today here in Australia. Oh, yeah, you guys are a day ahead. Well, that's probably not a day. It's like 12, 13 hours or something like that, right? Maybe 15, I don't know. You're a ways ahead of us, though. Yeah, it's only the 6th here. Alana says, Walt, thank you for your input. I always thank Walt for his input. He has always got great input to share with us, and I always appreciate it. Charles Langston says, I have an 8x10 shed. Going to try to raise quail. Will quail and chicken in the same shed be okay? Separate with wire. It's probably best to separate your chicken and your quail. There are some diseases that chicken carry that can be carriers of. It doesn't affect them necessarily, but it can affect your quail, and it can be deadly. It can be terminal for your quail. That doesn't mean you're going to have problems. I mean, you can go ahead and try it and see, but if it was me, I would try to separate them out by a little bit more than that, probably by 30 feet or something. Well, maybe not quite that much. 15, 20 feet, solid walls, something like that to keep them separate from each other. But that's just the way I would do it. All right. Walt says, what? Oh, Eugene says, I already do worm composting. Quail located in a non-worm shed. Can't raise mealworm there since they need Yeah, they do need some heat, that's for sure. But Walt's right, the mealworms are different than composting worms, but composting worms would be okay to feed your quail certain amounts of. You just really need to dive into this, and you need to really look up and research. It's a lot more than we can answer in a YouTube video and the comments here without being prepared to answer it ahead of time. There are different protein and I mean, there's a lot of things that quail need. The two things I tend to focus on are protein and calcium, because that's the part that varies in most commercial feeds. But there's a whole lot of, I mean, there's a certain amount of thiamine they need. There's a certain amount of vitamin B, vitamin E. There's a lot of different nutritional things that go into a quail's diet to make them healthy. And you need to kind of look all that up on, like, what do composting worms have in that? What do mealworms have in that? What do different types of seeds? And you're going to have to figure all that out. It's going to take a little while to figure that out. I'm sorry I can't give you the great answer on it, but it's pretty complex. That's why I just buy my quail food. All right. Heaven Bound Homestead, what a great name, says, I made an incubator in staying at 100 degrees. Is that all right? I made an incubator. It is staying at 100 degrees. Is that all right? And how much moisture should I worry about? Can it be too high? Yeah, your moisture can definitely be too high. 100 degrees, if it's a still air incubator, that's about right. If it's a forced air incubator, I like to be about 99.5 degrees. But as far as how much moisture you want in there, how much humidity you want in there, you really want to keep it below about 60%, or right at about 60%, I would say, is about where I'd like to keep it up until lockdown. And then it can go up to about 75%. Much over 80% humidity, though, you can end up killing your birds. They'll drown, basically, because it's just too much moisture in the air. So, yeah, it can definitely be too high. You do need ventilation. You need fresh air being able to ventilate through there. So just a couple of air holes in it here and there, that'll help with that. All right. Eugene says, I am aware, but they need some specific condition that I don't think I can provide without some heavy investment. So for the moment, I'm going to stick with common. Hey, no problem, Eugene. I'm not picking on you for that. You're right. It would require a pretty heavy investment, and I think honestly, trying to raise mealworms to feed your quail would probably be just about as expensive as buying just regular quail food. That's my thought on it. But yeah, you can only do what you can do. Denver Lang says, how do you keep quail from dropping black soldier fly larvae through the cage floor? Yeah, most of the worms I give to the birds fall through the ground. Well, I put them in the sandbox for them, or in their feeder dishes for them, which is like, my feeder dishes have the lid on them, so they stick their heads in there and they can't really fling them out. But yeah, otherwise they would just drop right through the cage floor. I like to put them in the sandbox, gives them something to dig around for and to find. And it seems to work okay. They don't get them all. Some of them they throw back out of the cage. Some of them they don't eat, period. But, they still have fun trying. All right. Walt says, Uncle Ernie raised Coturnix since they grow out much faster, so they could see the results faster than chickens. Interesting. Yeah, that's a good idea. Eugene says, I use a PVC pipe. I put holes that are just bigger than the quail heads so they don't waste so much food. Yeah, similar to my no-waste feeders. It's a pipe instead of a container, but it's the same concept. There's a hole in it that they stick their head in. They can't just throw the feed all the way around. So that's a good idea, Eugene. Walt says, on YouTube, Marshall Farm is a commercial quail operation. Raise them in a shed, stack, cage setup. Yep, I've seen that before too. Marshall Farms has got a pretty good, they sell birds, they sell eggs and things like that. Pretty big operation. Does quite a bit, and much bigger than what I do. I'm just a backyard guy, so. Alana says, got to go make dinner. On the menu, quail, of course, in a Dutch oven. Merry Christmas, everyone, and God bless you always. Thanks for stopping by, Alana. I hope you have a great night. We're getting, we got about 5-10 minutes here left. And God bless you too, Alana. Eddie Chavez says, do you know if African quail, harlequin quail are as big as Coturnix quail? I'm not incredibly familiar with African quail. I've heard of them. And harlequin quail, I don't know the sizes they get at. I'd have to look into that a little bit. I raise Coturnix because they are just they're domesticated. They they lay an egg a day. They grow out fast. They're about the biggest, the most easiest ones I can get a hold of. As far as I can know, there is not another quail out there that beats them for the backyard meat and egg production. They're just for not just the size, but the fast grow out, the reliability of the egg production, all those things combined, they are the clear winner. But I may be wrong. I'll look into African quail and harlequin quail a little bit and see. Denver says, haven't eaten any Coturnics yet, but plan to soon. Hope they taste good. Well, if you like Dove, if you've ever eaten Dove, they're very, very similar to Dove. But I like them. Everybody I fed them to really likes them. All right, Jen Putzes, I'm not sure if I got your name right, says, how can you tell if your birds are stressed out? Well, I don't know that... I don't guess I worry about my birds being stressed out too much, except, I mean, you look for the normal signs that you look with any kind of animal behavior. If they seem to be fine, if you go out there and watch them, and they're just kind of milling around their cage, eating a little bit, drinking a little bit, they're fine. Now, if they're pacing back and forth the whole time, and they're going to look, you're going to notice it in their body language. There's something wrong if they're doing that, or if they're real lethargic, just sitting in a corner, all fluffed out and not moving at all. And just, their eyes kind of gloomy, that's signs of stress as well. Coturnics will pant as well. That's usually a sign of heat stress, though. When it gets real hot out, you'll see them kind of open their beaks, and it's almost like a dog panting. That's a sign. But it's, I don't know that there's a whole lot of other things to look for. Onyx says, Denver, I think quail tastes great, really lean. Use caution not to overcook. Yep, that's a good point. Yeah, you don't want to overcook them because they will get a little bit on the tough side when you overcook them. They are a dark meat. They're not a white meat bird. So to me, they have, and I don't want to scare people off because and whenever I say this, people always kind of freak out, but everybody that eats the quail loves it. They taste a little bit like liver, and not like real strong liver flavor. You just have that kind of minerally kind of flavor to the meat. Like I said, everybody likes it, even people that don't like liver. So don't freak out if you're not a liver person. But that is kind of how I recognize the meat. It's a very good meat, though. And pickled quail eggs are yummy to you, Denver. I've only tried them once, and the ones that I made were not that good. And I don't know if I just don't like quail, pickled eggs, or if I just had a bad recipe. But to me, they just weren't that great. But who knows? Poultry Fanatic says, I have an African Harlingon quail, and they're the same size as my Chinese painted quail. Interesting. Eugene says, by the way, was really surprised how a closed food container with just a hole bigger than the quail head could be so effective. I can safely say I waste 20% less quail food with this method. Give it a try, people. Yeah, it works pretty well. It's pretty easy. And I've seen some other people, and probably some people that are in the chat here. I can't remember who posted some examples of some feeders that looked really good with like PVC pipe that was run inside the feeder. Looks like a great option. You could really fill it up with a lot more feed and not have to fill it quite as often. I imagine it would do just as well. I may try it out at some point, and if I do, I'll probably post videos on it when I do. All right, John says, I'm just getting started with bobs, and I want them to be happy. Well, don't stress too much about that, and good luck with your bob whites. I don't know where you're located, but around here, bob whites require a permit to raise, and because they're a native bird. So I can't raise them without a permit, and they're just not as prolific. It's just not worth it for me. But good luck with yours. I hope they do well. Philip says, any tips on getting family to try quail to eat? Right now, they're kind of grossed out and not willing to give it a try. Well, I'm not sure I can help with that. You might try some, like quesadillas. That's a really good one. You just take the breast meat off. Do it like you would chicken. You cut it in some little pieces, roll it in some like taco seasoning, fry it until it's done, put it in a quesadilla with cheese and all that kind of stuff. I don't know that it's a good idea to kind of sneak it in on them necessarily. You don't want to be seen as non-trustworthy by your family, but you might be able to get them to eat something that they're a little bit more familiar with, a food like that, where it's not necessarily just a bird that they have to, pry the meat off. That might be a little bit easier to get them to try that way. Denver Lange says, freezer full of rabbits at my house. Very nice. I've got some that will be in the freezer in, about 6 weeks or so, but none right now. And Eddie says, what's up with those lights behind you for sale? The lights behind me. What lights? Oh, these lights right here on the... Can you guys see these? These right there? No, those are just cheap shop lights. Those are my seed starting lights whenever I start seeds in the spring. They're just... they're $10 Harbor Freight... or not Harbor Freight. I think I got those at Lowe's. Like $10 for the shop light, and then I use... what is it? Like daylight bulb or whatever... You know, it's like a pack of fluorescent bulbs. That's all it is. It's nothing special there. Jesse Jackson says, can too much light stress quail? I'm sure it could. If you leave it on like 24 hours a day, then yeah, they do need some time down to relax, to have, I mean, everything needs to sleep, you know? So yeah, it can stress them out for sure. It's best to turn them off after a certain point of time. All right, Heaven Bound Homestead says, I had chemo, so I need the high that quail gives. I'm not sure what high that is, but hopefully when you say you had chemo, that means you're done with chemo, and I'm so glad to hear that you're done with it. If you're still going through it on a regular basis, then I'm definitely praying for a quicker recovery for you and that it does what it's supposed to do. Jen says, LOL, so true about the containers for feed. Cheap and easy. Yep, super easy. Heaven Bound Homestead says protein. Oh, that makes more sense. Okay, you had chemo, so you need the protein that quail gives. Yeah, quail is pretty high in protein. That's good. Rabbit is too. It's a very high protein meat. So, well, hopefully that does help out and it does provide well for you. All right, Eddie says, how long does the process for rabbits to take from bunnies to my table? Depends a little bit on what breed you have. If you have a good meat rabbit breed, like a good New Zealand white or a California or silver fox or something like that, usually about 8 weeks from the time they're born until the time you can butcher and put them on the table. 8 to 12, somewhere right around in there. Denver says, going to make the PVC feeder soon. Yep, that's a good option. Bouvier, there we go, Bouvier Aaron. I do feed my quail mealworms in their sandbox, the crude protein in pecking order. Dried mealworms is minimum 40%, calcium max 0.25%. Okay, so I got you. The crude protein in dried mealworms is around 47%. The calcium is around 0.25%. So it's really high in protein, way higher than what you need. So you can't just feed them straight on mealworms, but it's really low in calcium. They really need like 1.2 to 2.5% calcium. So you're gonna have to get the calcium levels up somewhere if you're feeding mealworms. But it's not a bad thing to feed them, as treats, as additions to maybe up the protein of another feed or something like that. It's fine. Eugene says it's almost 3 a.m. here. I have to go get some sleep. We'll look at the rest of the weekly podcasts later. Thank you all. Have a nice day. Well, we're about done, Eugene. We only got like 2 or 3 minutes, and I got to wrap this up. My wife just got home from work, so need to go spend some time with her. Thanks for staying up late and joining us on the live broadcast. I appreciate it. All right, Kuldeep Kaswan. Hopefully I got your name right. Hi, Chris. I've been around 200 bunnies between 25 days and 55 days old. Excuse me. Part of this medication I'm on right now is giving me the hiccups, but I think I'm okay. So let's try this again. I have around 200 bunnies between 25 days, 55 days old. I'm growing them in colony. Is this fine or have any risk to grow them in colony? Need to take them to cages. 200 bunnies, that'd be a whole lot of cages, but I mean, if it's working, it's working. You're the one, you'll have to tell me if it's fine, if it's working or not. There are some risks to growing in colonies, of course. The big ones are going to be a little bit more easily accessible by predators. May or may not be an issue where you're at. They're going to be more susceptible to parasites and diseases when they're in contact with the ground. But again, depends on where you're at and how big of a deal that is. It sounds like it's working for you. If you've got 200 bunnies in there between 25 to 55 days old, I don't know that I'd change things if things are going well for you. I do personally like to keep mine in cages, but I'm not doing 200 bunnies at a time. I like to keep them in cages so I can control the breeding a little bit better, and it's just a little bit easier for me. But, there's nothing wrong with what you're doing there. It seems like it's working. Walt Lars says, made a PVC pipe to a Tupperware feeder, cut holes in the bottom to let the feed flow into the Tupperware feeder. Run the pipe out of the cage, makes easier to refill. Yep, that's absolutely the idea I was thinking of too, Walt. Eddie says, I don't catch about the Harlequin quail. Sorry. Do you know anything about them? Not a lot about Harlequin quail, honestly. Look them up. Just do a Google search for them. You'll find out everything you need to know. It's not, I've looked into them a little bit and decided it's not something I'm super interested in, so I didn't spend any time looking any further. All right, Eiley Gamer says, for my first rabbit farm, how many should I start off with? Are rabbit colonies good, or does breed matter for coat and meat for pets? I'll use their coat for crafts. Well, that's a big question. It depends. Yeah, the rabbit colonies are fine if you do it right. You are going to have to, look into that a little bit. It is going to be a little bit, in ways, a little bit more work. You're going to have to clean up after them more. You're going to have to make sure they don't dig out of the enclosures. Kind of the things I talked about with the higher risk of disease and parasites and predators and those kinds of things may or may not be a big issue for you. It just depends on where you live and what kinds of concentrations of those things you have in your areas. I think if it was me and I was just starting off, I would start off much smaller scale in cages, get the hang of it first before you try to go in all in. There's nothing like, if you try to go in with like Kuldeep has with 200 bunnies at once in a colony setting, you're going to get overwhelmed quickly. You need to get an idea of what it's like to raise just a couple of litters first, and then decide how big you want to go from there. As far as certain breeds, it depends on what you're looking for. If you want good coats and meat out of them, Rexes are probably your best bet for that. They're kind of a dual purpose rabbit. They produce a good breed or a good coat, and they produce a good meat. And you're right, you're only going to be able to use those for crafts because you really need to grow your rabbits out to adulthood much bigger than what you would be butchering them for meat in order to get good rabbit pelts off of them that you could use much for crafts. Depends. I don't know what the pet market is on your area either, whether you're going to be able to sell them as pets or not. If you keep them in a colony, most likely you're going to have a hard time selling them as pets. They're just not going to be very tame usually, but that's not a guarantee either. There's just a whole lot of ifs in that question. I can't really give you a solid answer on that one. Sorry. Libertarian Values says, before you go, I have had soft shells with my birds, but they won't eat the calcium bits I put in their food. Offer the calcium as a side, not in the food itself. They should eat enough. If you're getting just a few soft shells, don't stress about it. That stuff happens, especially when the birds first start laying. But you don't want to mix the calcium in with their feed. You want to offer it in a separate container as a free feed. They'll just eat as much as they need. It's nothing to worry about usually. Soft shells, again, especially when they first start laying, are a very common thing that you're going to run into. They just tend to lay some soft shells, and then they usually get over it pretty quick. If that doesn't work, you might look and see if you can find a higher calcium food that's around 2% calcium and see if that fixes it. But my guess is that this is just a short-term thing, and I wouldn't worry about it too much. All right. Sorry I missed another live stream. Well, Ben, you made it to part of it, so I'm glad you made it here. I am running out of time. I always hate cutting this off because there's comments coming in, but I got to cut this off. I got to go spend some time with my wife before it's bedtime. Time to get up and go to work all over again tomorrow. So thank you guys for your continued prayers for my wife's surgery coming up next week. Barring any kind of catastrophes or whatever, I should be on next Thursday night for another live broadcast. Thank you guys all for joining me tonight, keeping the live broadcast going with your comments that keep me engaged. And God bless each and every one of you. We will see you next week. Have a great night, and Merry Christmas to everybody.